Thank you for joining us on this edition of Go Erie Live. Today's topic, we have our executive editor, Doug Oathout here, who is addressing some of the changes that we have seen in the print newspaper here recently. Thanks so much for joining us, and thank you to our sponsor, Gannon University, for seeing the value here today in these live discussions. Doug, take it away.
Thank you, sir. This morning's paper featured two comics pages that look a lot different from the comics pages we've been running for the past 20 years. Missing from today's paper are about 10 comics that we have eliminated. This is part of a cost reduction program, but also we went into this with the intent of using our audience, our readers, to help us pick winners and losers. Who do we keep? Who do we say goodbye to after all these years? And the result is what you find in today's paper. This goes back to January 17th when I put a story in the paper and a survey that sought the opinions of all of our readers. The outpouring of reaction has been just stunning, and it's actually been for the most part, constructive reaction. It's everybody who engaged with me, and it surpasses about 3,500 people at this point, between the survey responses, both online and printed out, the emails, the phone calls, the follow-up emails. It's been just a tremendous moment of engagement between me and the readers on an almost one-to-one percentage. The interesting thing is how people reached out. It's clear that comics matter to folks. It's clear that the funny pages are therapeutic to most people and a part of their everyday habit. And trust me, I don't want to mess with people's habits too much. But this moment, after 20 years of not dealing with our comics, we needed to actually address them. There are some, like Get Fuzzy and Herman, that were actually in reruns. They're not even new comics anymore. So and yet we keep paying for them. And so in January, I sought your advice, and you flooded me with your ideas and your recommendations. For instance, was this person's. This is Donna Grinshaw, and it's pretty clear which one she liked. It's Peanuts. Of course, Peanuts stayed. It's one of the most popular comics out there. But also a lot of readers, and I wanted to take time just to kind of read the letters, some of the letters that people sent in. I received several hundred, but Elaine Ross, for instance, wrote that I am a woman in my 80s and am used to my daily paper with breakfast, so the comics are enjoyed every day. It's nice that you see my opinion is valued, even if I don't get everything I want. Fortunately for her, all the ones that she picked are actually ones that everybody picked. Pickles and Blondie are among those that survived. Mrs. James Gerlin, she wrote that please, please, please keep Pickles, Zits, Arlo and Janice, and Peanuts. All of those are still in the paper. I still love reading the paper and having the paper delivered every day to our home rather than online. Hope you can keep up the good work for many years. Thank you. Wonderful affirmation. Thank you to her. Mrs. Lois Bardos wrote, sorry that one of life's little pleasures is getting littler. Comics are a break. And yet she implored me to take out Pearls Before Swine, Wallace the Brave, and Dilbert. Wallace the Brave is gone, but Dilbert and Pearls Before Swine survive. The Lou Bruces wrote, I also want to note that what we pay for the Times newspaper, that for what we pay for the Times newspaper, there should not be any eliminations. Some comics should be dropped, however, and replaced by better ones. He pointed out that Leo and Herman could go. Their time is over. Then there was just this simple note. We do enjoy the comics. We are still kids at heart. One of the more interesting ones was just this person's vote. You can see they X'd out the ones that they did not want. Very clear. Not a fan of the Mark Trail, Brex Morgan, and Mary Worth cartoons, or Get Fuzzy, among others. Garth and Peggy Hetz wrote, Dear Editor Doug, as practically lifelong readers of the Erie Times, I'm 80 and my wife is not that. My goodness. My apologies, it's a little dark in this room to be reading from these things when it's so close, and I should wear my glasses. I'm sad to see any of them, that any of them have to go. I actually read all of them right after sports. My wife and I both read Mary Worth and Rex Morgan and Pickles. Sorry you have to do this, but understand the situation. Your loyal subscribers, Garth and Peggy Hetz. And that brings me to the point of, why did we do this? In addition to, every so often you should walk through the content that you have. This is part of a resource allocation that we're doing here. By making these changes to the comics pages, we were able to save several $1,000s a year on an annualized basis, and those are resources that we're able to put forth into our newsroom for the actual news generation that we're doing every day. It's very serious business, but the package that we ended up with, judging from only the few calls that I've received today, and not a lot of reaction, is that the package actually looks pretty good to folks. It's a full page of comics on one hand, some other comics on the page, the ongoing horoscope and the bridge column that have been on those pages for years, and then a half page of crosswords and puzzles. Those had been elsewhere in our newspaper, and we moved them to this to create an environment of amusement and thinking through things. A few other points that people made. Again, this is Rick Hogue. He sent his full list of his favorite comics, and most of those are actually comics that stayed. Beetle Bailey, Blondie, Lola, Loose Parts, High and Lois, and Baby Blues, Dilbert, Big Nate, Pickles, Peanuts, Garfield, Luann, Mother Goose and Grimm. These are all comics that many other folks wrote me about or emailed me to let me know that they mattered to them.
We have a comment from a reader that's kind of long, so stick with me.
Okay.
I support city newspapers. When I travel, I always get a paper from whatever city I'm in. I'm actually rooting for the Erie paper to stay afloat as a hometown springboard for news and information. The disappointing things to me about the Erie paper are the size of the actual paper, seems like it's shrinking, and the lack of hard-hitting journalists. With the exception of Pat Howard, there are none of the journalists that made the Erie paper one of the best. I do realize that the paper is owned by an out-of-town faceless corporation, and that all of the writers who wrote articles I love to read are retired or gone. Going forward, best of luck. I do get the e-delivery because I hate to have to dispose of the papers themselves. It takes me less than 10 minutes to read it. Disappointing, but I'm not ready yet to give up on the paper.
And what's the name on
Lynn Blank.
Lynn? Lynn, thanks for the message and for the passion behind it. You know, the industry itself is something that's changing in dramatic ways, and this paper and this news organization is changing with it. As far as the point about hard-hitting journalism, I'd have to disagree with you on that. We have a room full of just fantastic journalists, very seasoned veterans, and Ed Pelletella, Val Myers, Jim Martin. In sports, you have, Tom Reisenweber, who is the icon of local sports. You have Pam Parker over in features, along with Jenny and her food columns. It is it's a staff that, they bring it every single day. And recently, when the GE strike was happening, everyone turned to Jim Martin. He's been covering GE for 20 years, and he had the best reporting on that whole incident, and you'll see more about it in tomorrow's paper because he's continuing to follow it. We will continue to change. We will continue to evolve, and even though I hear those comments about the paper being smaller, I would caution people who have that perception is to think about all the other channels that we're delivering to. Even though the print edition is smaller than it used to be, we also have a website. We have this Facebook channel. We have a Twitter feed. All the reporters have their own independent Twitter feeds. There is actually, on a per person basis, probably more content going out now than there was before because, it takes time to do things like this where I'm sitting in here talking to you through Facebook rather than at my desk editing a story for tomorrow's print edition. It just, it's part of the evolution of the industry. One of the other things that came up back to the comics thing, one of the very personally rewarding pieces of this whole thing was getting to know one of our own cartoonists. Dave Blazik, who does the Loose Parts cartoon, is actually from Erie, grew up here, went to Cathedral Prep, went to Penn State Barron, then went on to the Philly newspapers where he worked and started creating the Loose Parts cartoon. We've been carrying it for a number of years through the Washington Post News Service. And he reached out, and when he heard that we might be eliminating cartoons and very pleasantly lobbied for himself. Of course, all his friends and family had also lobbied for him, and it was clear that we were going to support a hometown artist. But he went above and beyond. He sent us several copies of one of his books, and the first 7 people who requested on this Facebook feed, you'll get this book. And but even better than that, he is coming here in April. On April 17th, he will have a meet and greet about 6 p.m. in the Burke Center at Penn State Barron, and then he'll do a live draw event for all of us there starting at 6:30. It should be a wonderful evening. I hope you will join us out there. And it's also will be for me a way to kind of put a period to this long sentence of dealing with our cartoons and comics pages. It's been very interesting and compelling. I've learned a lot from the people who reached out to me, but it's I am hoping that the result is our result, not just my result to you, and that the comics pages that you see today and going forward are something that remain kind of a respite from the rest of the news that's happening, and also that you have a little bit of satisfaction that you helped create them. Thank you for everything that you've done for us and for reaching out and being a part of this process. It's been educational and invigorating, and but I am glad to have it finished. Wish you all the best, And if you have any other thoughts, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach me by email at doug.oathout@timesnews.com. You can call me at 870-1698, or you can even stop by the office. Plenty of people do. Thank you.
Thanks again for joining this live Go Erie live chat today. Make sure to stay into Go Erie's Facebook page for future topics and guests. Thanks again to Gannon for sponsoring this Go Erie Live.